Such a good daughter, so slow to judge. It's like stupidity. It drives me crazy.
Jessica Lange and Michelle Pfeiffer star in the screen adaptation of the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel 1,000 Acres. One of 6 new movies we'll be reviewing this week on Siskel and Ebert. I'm Gene Siskel of the Chicago Tribune.
And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. In King Lear, a confused old man wanders aimlessly across the heath. In 1,000 Acres, which is a modern retread of Shakespeare's tragedy, it's the confused screenplay that does the meandering in a film which seems to include almost everything but a point of view. The film starts on a familiar note with a patriarchal Iowa farmer played by Jason Robards dividing his farm among his 3 daughters. Of course, the 2 older ones, played by Jessica Lange and Michelle Pfeiffer, think that's a great idea. And of course, the youngest one, played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, enrages her father by expressing her doubts.
You don't want it, my girl, you're out. Simple as that.
A little later on, the younger sister shares her concern about her father's erratic behavior.
Look, all I know is Daddy's lost everything. He's made an error of judgment, and he's suffering. And maybe he's got some regrets, and it's making him act strange. But you don't care enough to do anything about it. It's clear who's benefiting here.
And soon concern is escalated to hate, at least on the part of Pfeiffer's character. But while King Lear saw the sisters as evil and selfish, 1,000 Acres wants to have it both ways, retelling Lear, but with the women more sympathetic and the king sympathetic not at all. Here's the scene we were waiting for, the old man wandering in the storm. And the daughters really let him have it here because the plot has resorted to that weary standby of modern fiction. Wouldn't you know, he abused them as children.
Get somebody else to take you in because I, for one, have had it.
You hear her? She talks to me almost worse than you do.
You think this is bad, Daddy? You'd be amazed at what you really deserve.
Now, the performances are very good in 1,000 Acres. Pfeiffer and Lange have a couple of scenes together that are luminous and touching. But the story, based clumsily on the novel by Jane Smiley, is a mess. All through the movie, I was asking, who do I like in this film? Certainly none of the men. The various husbands are completely dispensable. Not the old man, although I felt sorry for him, and not any of the daughters, because the screenplay never has the clarity to declare who was right and who was wrong.
Well, of course, on the abuse angle, they do declare that. Neither one of us has to have a character that we like in a picture to make a picture work. I don't think you're saying that, are you?
No, not necessarily, but this movie seems to keep feeling, oh, you know, now we're going to advocate this point of view, now that point of view. There's no point of view.
The only point of view you're left with is the abuse angle, and it just clangs. I would have been more interested in this story if that had been completely removed from it, and we got into the dynamic of family businesses, which a lot of people can relate to. Family businesses do have problems, generational issues. I mean, that's provocative in the realistic setting of film, when you have a film on a farm.
Yeah. The thing is about the child abuse thing, there's no catharsis for that. There's no payoff. There's no accusation. There's no grief. There's no anger. It's set up, and then it's forgotten along with so much else. All through the movie, you have people just making U-turns. Oh, now this is happening. Now this is happening. It doesn't go organically.
All right. Our next movie is a film also set in rural America, and it also features a problematical father character. But the writing in the new movie, The Myth of Fingerprints, I think is a whole lot more sophisticated than 1,000 Acres, so much so that while you're watching this movie, you may ask yourself more than once, and in an exciting way, what is this movie really about? This time, you're not confused, you're curious. It's a family reunion for sure, centered on Thanksgiving, as 2 brothers return to their parents' home in Maine. The younger brother, played by Noah Wiley from TV's ER, hasn't been home in 3 years, and he's curious about his old girlfriend.
What'd she say? No, forget it. I don't want to know. How'd she look? No, I don't want to know that either.
And here is the family at dinner with the grown children and their lovers joining the father, Roy Scheider. Haven't seen him for a while. And the mother, Blythe Danner.
I'm very happy that I am in love with your son. Jake, that is. Sorry, Warren.
It's It's okay.
I just wanted to thank you for having me here and for creating him. And just thank you to everyone.
Naturally, the younger brother winds up meeting his old flame, played by Aria Barakis.
It's funny. I never knew how I would get over you. And I still don't.
Old wounds, fresh wounds, characters struggling with life, sexuality everywhere. The Myth of Fingerprints nails all of that in one vignette after another. This is a solid first film by Bart Freundlich, and I look forward to his next work. Thumbs up for me on The Myth of Fingerprints.
Thumbs down for me, even though I agree with you that many of the scenes are well written. The movie ends in midstream with a cut to black, kind of like a New Yorker short story in which you think, well, you know, nothing has been solved, but isn't it all ironic? But unfortunately,
I don't know if there's anything to
in this
be solved.
film, well, there are many threads that are brought up,
yes,
including once again the problem of the father's sexual behavior with the younger woman, and there's no true confrontation about that. There is another problem, and that is there are so many characters that it's really hard. They could have been, you know, a smaller family. Jodie Foster's film Home for the Holidays last year about Thanksgiving was much better organized and much more dramatic. In this film, you feel like you're looking at almost like laboratory or workshop sketches to develop the characters, and that at some point the screenplay should have been taken to another level.
At least we agree on this. This guy can write.
Oh, that's a valid point. Yeah, he can. Okay, coming up later, a controversial documentary that says government agencies lied about the standoff at Waco.
The FBI never fired one shot at the Davidians.
Coming up next, two young Midwesterners struggle with going all the way.
Does your new friend make it a habit of going to bars in the middle of the afternoon?
Go on her! Go on her! Go on her!
Hi, darling. Oh, sweetheart.
Good. Nina, I want you to meet my friend Sonny Burns. Sonny's my mother, Nina.
Two old high school classmates are home from the Army, and one of them can't help noticing the other's mother in that scene from Going All the Way, based on Dan Wakefield's celebrated novel about coming of age in Indianapolis in the 50s. The hero is Sonny Burns, played by Jeremy Davies, and the friend he idolizes is a former jock, now a would-be philosopher, named Gunnar Castleman and played by Ben Affleck. Gunnar meets a girl named Marty, played by Rachel Weisz, who voices the idea in all of their minds. They need to discover their futures by getting out of Indiana and moving to New York.
Well, I may be heading there myself, as a matter of fact, to do some studying on the GI Bill.
Oh.
Sonny has had a faithful girlfriend since high school, played by Amy Locane, but somehow her very availability turns him off. He thinks he can always count on her, but maybe he's not right.
You're great and you deserve a great guy.
I've got one.
Who am I? I'm nobody. I can't begin to be whoever you need to treat you the way to love you.
I've got one. Harry Stapler.
You what?
Harry Stapler. We got engaged.
Going All the Way is a very wise movie about the weaknesses of men and the burdens of the women who love them.
I didn't get involved in this picture at all, Roger. The relationship between the two men, which is the central relationship in the film, even though they're pursuing women, it's the two guys. That one I didn't understand. I didn't understand the fidelity of the better-looking guy to the nerdier guy. I just did not. I know it can happen in life. I didn't see that the film justified it. I needed more explanation. Coming-of-age pictures, men and women. I'll take American Graffiti, even on a light comic level over this anytime.
Of course, whether or not we can believe these characters is not necessarily the same thing as whether we like the film or not. But I'm going to tell you something. Although this film is not autobiographically identical to my experiences, I've never seen a film in my life that is closer to the experiences in mind and in body and in sexuality that I had when I was just getting out of high school and going to college than this film. In other words, the friendships, the girls, everything reminded me specifically of things that I had either seen or I had gone through.
I don't have that personal connection to the material. For me, as I mentioned, it would be American Graffiti. So there we have it, and I think I have the better movie.
Well, maybe so, but I really love Jeremy Davies in this film. I like the fact that he was more vulnerable than a Benjamin Braddock type character, for example, in the Gravesend.
Yes, he is vulnerable, that's for sure. Coming up next, a new documentary that examines the tragedy at Waco, Texas.
In the fall of 1993, Treasury and Justice issued their respective reports about Waco.
The United States Congress investigates the debacle that 4 years ago killed 76 men, women, and children who belonged to the Branch Davidian religious sect based in Waco, Texas, in a new documentary called Waco, which clearly attempts to establish that agents from the FBI and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms lied to the Congress and the American people and needlessly harassed and ultimately murdered religious worshipers. To start with, the FBI claims that they fired no shots at the Branch Davidians, but the documentary has hired experts who argue otherwise based on looking at surveillance tapes.
And according to our calculations, it indicates that both positions are firing automatic weapons.
The documentary also argues that the FBI acted out of a macho, don't trifle with us posture toward the Branch Davidians after, to be sure, a 2-month standoff.
When the governmental agency made a decision to breach holes into the building, they set up a configuration of a pot-bellied stove. You wanted to burn slow, you close off the vents. If you wanted to burn fast, you open it up.
Singled out for scorn is the then new Attorney General of the United States, Janet Reno, who, the film argues, let the FBI run wild and, crucially, walked away from responsibility by choosing to give a speech in nearby Baltimore rather than stay in her office and supervise the FBI's invasion of the Davidian compound.
During the course of the morning, the question arose whether I should cancel the speech, and the FBI did not want me to do so because they thought it would attract attention if I suddenly canceled a speech. It looked like there would be an emergency.
Waco, The Rules of Engagement. That's the full title of this documentary. It's fascinating in the way it argues that the FBI acted irresponsibly. Would the documentary be stronger if the FBI had been allowed to argue its own case? Yes, definitely yes. But this is clearly an advocacy piece of filmmaking, and it certainly raised plenty of questions in my mind about how our government handled the Waco tragedy. Thumbs up for me.
Thumbs way up for me, too. And, you know, although it does have a particular point of view, it tries to be fair. It does show information from both sides, but the defenders of the government positions are inarticulate. They are clearly, I think, not saying everything that they're thinking or that they know, and they're hewing to a party line. You can look in the eyes of the people in this film and tell who you feel is telling the truth and who isn't. And what it amounts to here is that the American people were sold a bill of goods about the Branch Davidians that wasn't necessarily true, that these people were demonized in a way that wasn't accurate, and then boys with toys, Gene. All those guys who never got a chance to drive a tank before and who were excited and ready to go, like that guy who says, I'm honed to kill. I'm honed to kill. Well, they just couldn't wait to start shooting.
That's why this is an important documentary, in addition to just the case that it deals with. Two things. One, the macho element. Hey, if you're on point for 2 months, you're going to want to shoot something if you haven't been able to. That's telling us something. And the other one, and I think this is the most interesting one, is how we learn from the media. The fault, ultimately, and I'll pick myself, okay, is that I wasn't as plugged into this story as I should have been, because I'm getting sometimes a headline
service. Of course, at the time, there was no information available about the other side. And now when you see this film, what's interesting is if you're looking for people who are unbalanced zealots, you don't find them among the Branch Davidians. You find them among the FBI and the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. Those are the people in this movie who deserve to be feared, I think.
Well, but what I'm saying is that when we do these religious cult stories, when the media does these stories, then they better do a little bit harder reporting. I think that's one of the things you take out.
They should stay away from the trigger words like cult and compound. How about calling it a religious group and their church? That would have changed the entire perception of what went on.
Because to me, the stunner is who is in that compound. Weren't those
sensible, sincere people who were not under the hypnotic leadership.
This is not Jim Jones, and the film makes that, the Guyana story repeatedly makes that comment. When we come back, 4 friends from Brooklyn spend a wild and tragic night in Gravesend. Put the gun away.
story behind our next film is better than the story on the screen. Gravesend was written and directed by a 19-year-old named Sal Stabile, he's now 22, on a shooting budget of $5,000. I didn't think that'd be enough for the electricity until I found out he stole the electricity by tapping city street lights. The movie tells the story of 4 mentally challenged friends of Sal's who spend a long and violent night after one of them more or less accidentally kills another one's brother. It will help to understand this scene if you know that the dead brother's body is in the trunk and they've decided to bury him but need to raise cash to pay the fixer whose brother runs a cemetery. In desperation, they try robbing a grocery to raise the $500 they need.
Go check on Ray. Sorry, we'll be closing up soon. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Where's Mr. Coe?
He had a little accident tonight, and
Accident? Was he all right?
Yeah, he's okay.
What happened to him?
I don't know. I filled in for him.
Who are you?
I'm his nephew.
Then one of the guy's fathers and his teenage girlfriend get killed, so now there are 3 bodies in the trunk. The best scenes in the movie involve the fixer, a guy named Jojo the Junkie, played here by Mackie Aquilino from Donnie Brasco. He's a janitor, which makes it easier for him to burn bodies.
The best I can do for you is I can bury one. I'll burn the other 2.
We're not gonna burn, Zane.
Gravesend is a remarkable accomplishment in that for $5,000 it looks good, it has a lot of energy, and it finds some convincing performances. It tells people watching it, hey, you can make a movie. But it's handicapped in a couple of ways. One, the characters are incredibly stupid and verbally limited and spend most of their time in tiresome wrestling matches. And 2, the psychological reactions in the film are not convincing. What I know for sure is I'm looking forward to Sal Stabile's next film, because he obviously has talent, and incidentally, that next film is being produced by Steven Spielberg.
Well, yes, he does. I had the same kind of reaction, though, in the picture. The one actor I would single out is this, the character of Zane, who does the first killing. Tony Tucci is his name, and he's compelling, and it isn't a star turn. I just thought that the film was so unrelenting in killing after killing that I wanted some part of the picture to breathe. That's why you responded and I responded to the janitor, because there was a comic moment of something to let, and I think if there had been more of those moments, I think less killing would have made the picture more interesting.
And a lot less wrestling. I mean, every time they can't think of anything to say, they start hitting each other. When we come back, 2 lonely women forged love out of friendship in Fire.
Our next film is called Fire, a would-be provocative feature from India, and I presume it's the first major film from that country to deal with lesbian images, as 2 sisters-in-law end up making love, in part, out of frustration with the traditional role of women in Indian culture. After that embrace, the older sister-in-law is influenced by the younger one, particularly in her rebellion against the Indian tradition of female subservience.
You didn't hear me calling?
Yes, I did.
Why didn't you come?
Sita says the concept of duty is overrated.
I think Fire is a case of a film that undoubtedly means more in its country of origin than it means here. I wasn't shocked by it. I wasn't that moved. It's noteworthy in a historical sense, but that's all as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I think it's about a lot more than lesbianism, but it is interesting that the Hindu language doesn't have a word for lesbians. That the people in this movie, none of them really have a concept for what's going on because it's alien to their experience. What I found fascinating was that family, the joint family, the 2 families living together in the room above the video store with the old grandmother with her bell, and the character of the servant was just hilarious, that guy. He was almost worth the price of admission by himself. And as I watched this film, I was really interested on this kind of beautiful moving window into another culture.
Yeah, but Roger, we've seen countless Indian films. This one doesn't have any resonance in that culture. India is a tremendous tradition of films with much better written
characters. I'm not saying it's a great film by Satyajit Ray. I'm saying that I'm happy that I saw it.
Okay, now let's recap the movies we reviewed on this show. 2 thumbs down, marginally, for 1,000 Acres, a well-acted but overwritten farm drama with Michelle Pfeiffer and Jessica Lange. A split vote on what I thought was an offbeat smart family drama, The Myth of Fingerprints. Roger wanted the story to have more depth. A split vote on Going All the Way, based on Dan Wakefield's novel, which Roger enjoyed a whole lot more than I did. 2 thumbs up for the shocking documentary Waco, The Rules of Engagement, a special motion picture. 2 thumbs down on Gravesend, a New York drama about a neighborhood where violence is a way of life for too many young men. And finally, a split vote on Fire, the Indian drama of women breaking with tradition, Roger preferring it more than I did. So we do have some young filmmakers here, but the real discovery is Waco.
This movie is moving around the country. They're sometimes having discussions after it. I think that anyone who thinks they know what happened at Waco has another thing coming.
Okay, remember you can check our votes and hear our reviews of recent movies at our website. The address is Siskel-Ebert.com. Next week we'll be back with reviews of more new movies, including The Peacemaker, starring George Clooney and Nicole Kidman in a race against time with a nuclear terrorist, and also The Edge. That's next week, and until then, the balcony is closed.